Welcome to episode 6 of the Gambots Podcast. I'm your host, Eric, and this is my co-host.
It's Christian.
Today's a little bit of a different episode for you guys. We are going to be going through a list of movies that you can watch for Halloween. Me and Christian will each have about 15, and then our number one movie to watch on October 1st and the movie we think you should watch on October 31st. So to get started with it, Christian, what is your number one movie to get you in the Halloween spirit for October 1st?
For October 1st, my pick would be Hocus Pocus.
That's a good one. And we'll talk about it a little bit later as well, but why do you think that's a good one to get you in the spirit?
I don't know. It's just, that's typically the first one that comes to mind when I think about the Halloween season. Now, there are obviously a lot of other movies I jump in on later, but that's the one for me that I'm like, as soon as I start seeing advertisements for it, I know it's coming. Halloween is on the horizon.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, Hocus Pocus follows the story of a teenage boy who accidentally reawakens three witches onto, I believe it's like a New England town, him and a girl and his sister's job to get them back to the dead, and it's a fun movie.
Yeah, it's definitely a favorite of mine.
Who's your favorite character in it?
Oh, geez. Probably the cat.
Binks the cat, yes. He is good. My favorite moment in it is Bette Midler's I'll Put a Spell on You song. I think it is so catchy and perfect for that movie.
Yeah, that's a good one for sure. So what about you? What's your pick for the first?
My number one movie that I always watch for October, I love Halloween, and this just gets me in the spirit, is Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow. I know that Tim Burton's a little bit played out at this point, but I still love his art direction. And I think for Sleepy Hollow, you get it in a time frame when it's the fall, they're doing their harvest festival, and the art direction in it is just so good. It's creepy. It's not overly scary, but you get in the mood for it. There's the Headless Horseman going around. It has a great cast. It has Johnny Depp playing Ichabod Crane. It's Christopher Walken playing the Headless Horseman. It's just a really, really fun movie. And it's a little bit of a mystery, too. So you're going through there trying to figure out who the Headless Horseman is because they originally think it's just a normal crime. And I think it's a great movie.
I've never seen that one.
I highly suggest it. It's fun. It's back before I think Johnny Depp, his earlier career is not too bad, and he's fun to watch. And this is still when I think he's a pretty good actor. It's not his later movies where he is just phoning everything in.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of Chris Walken. I didn't know he was in that.
Yeah, I don't believe he has any speaking lines, but his teeth are filed to a point in it, and he looks creepy.
Oh, man, Christopher Walken with no speaking lines is almost a tragedy.
Yeah, he just makes a lot of noises. Okay, so movie 3 we're going to put on for our 31 Days of Halloween movies is I picked Evil Dead 2, directed by Sam Raimi, and it has Bruce Campbell in it. I think it's the best of the Evil Dead trilogy. For those of you who don't know, there's Evil Dead 2, and Army of Darkness. Army of Darkness is my personal favorite, but it's a little campy, and it doesn't have as good of the Halloween spirit. Evil Dead 2 has a mixture of humor and horror, whereas the first one is mostly just a horror movie. The second one retells the first movie very quickly and then continues on with it. I think Evil Dead 2 is great. Stories about Bruce Campbell goes to a cabin in the woods to get away with his girlfriend who he's going to propose to. They awaken an ancient evil, and then it starts haunting him, and it's just him slowly going mad while fighting this evil.
Bruce Campbell's always good.
Oh, he's one of my favorite actors. In Burn Notice, I think he's great. They actually have Evil Dead the Musical, which combines Evil Dead's 2 and Army of Darkness to some extent, where they use the lines. If you have not seen Evil Dead 2 yet, you should really check it out. It has a cult status for a reason. It's so good. All right, Christian, what do you have for the third movie of the month?
So this might be a bit of an obvious pick, but I'm going to stand by it, and it's Nightmare Before Christmas. I grew up with this movie ever since I was a little kid, and it's always been an absolute favorite of mine.
That's a really good one, especially the music in it is amazing.
Yeah, I listen to it to this day. I jam out. I'm unashamed. And I mean, it's a toss-up whether it could be a Halloween movie or a Christmas movie. I choose to live my best life and just listen to it twice a year.
Good call.
But I mean, it's a relatively famous movie, but for anyone who doesn't know, it's just the story of a skeleton who decides to take over Christmas because he thinks he can do Christmas better than Santa Claus can, and it's really just wonderful.
So if you guys don't know, it's also one of Tim Burton's stop-motion movies, similar to Corpse Bride and Coraline. But what's interesting is I went to a Tim Burton exhibit in New York once where they had a bunch of his stuff. The figures they use for this are way bigger than I thought they'd be. Like they're, 2-3 feet high, each of them.
Oh, wow, that's really cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're surprisingly large. Is Nightmare Before Christmas one of your favorite worlds in Kingdom Hearts?
It's definitely up there, yeah. I'm generally not a huge fan of any of the worlds where you have to transform into other things, but they did a pretty good job with that one. They're not too wild.
Yeah. For the fourth day, I am picking Shaun of the Dead. It's an Edgar Wright film starring Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, and I think it's the best zombie movie out there. It's mostly a comedy, but they subvert every zombie trope there is. And there's so many layers to Edgar Wright movies where the more you watch it, the more jokes you actually pick up on later on that you had no idea were even there to begin with. It's just so good. And the cinematography on it, the jokes that keep coming back. There's actually a joke in the very beginning that they outline the entire course of the movie when they're joking around at a pub. Like the music in it is, for fight scenes is amazing. It's just such a good movie. And if you guys have not seen it, I highly suggest checking it out.
Yeah, I love Shaun of the Dead. It is absolutely a great movie.
All right, what are you picking for the fifth day?
Day 5, I'm going with It, but not probably the one that you're thinking of. I'm going to go with the one from 1990 that was made for TV.
That's a cult classic, I think. I know a lot of people talked very highly of that when It from 2017 was released.
I love the new one. I thought it was really well done. I was really nervous about it when it came out, but I don't know. Part of me is always going to like the original more.
I know they did 2 different directions on Pennywise in this one. The one you see in the 1990, it's a little... How is it different than the 2017 one?
Well, that's one of the things I liked more about the original was the Pennywise design. It's played by Tim Curry, who is just a genius in everything that he's in. And the Pennywise in the original one from 1990 is not very menacing when you first meet him. He just looks like a clown, which I feel like that's what he's supposed to look like. The one from 2017, if I saw that clown walking down the street, there's no way I would approach it in any way, shape, or form. It's terrifying.
Yeah. Oh, man, we'll talk about it a bit later. But the opening scene when Georgie is like, hey, it's a clown living in the sewer. Like, man, that clown is not inviting you to go into the sewer.
No, and Tim Curry's just had the fluffy hair, and he had the whole look of just a typical clown until he wanted to be menacing, and then he got real good at it. But that was my thoughts on the original, was just the clown was supposed to be kind of nondescript and approachable at first, something that can catch kids off guard, not something that's going to look terrifying right out of the gate.
So in the 1991, does it follow them as kids and adults?
Yeah, but it mixes them up. So like in the new one, the first movie's just the kids, whereas in the originals, it starts with them as adults, and then it's told through flashbacks throughout the entire movie.
Okay, that's more in line with how the book is then, because the book is them as adults and they're remembering stuff as they're going through the town of all the repressed memories they have from the summer of fighting it.
Yeah, and it's also super long because it's I guess less of a movie and more of a TV miniseries. I think it was 2 or 3 parts on TV.
At the end, do they have the psychic battle that I know they have in the book, but that I don't know if they're going to do in the newest movie?
Not really. It turns into a giant spider monster and they shoot rocks up into its like soft underbelly. It gets real weird at the end.
Yeah. I love Stephen King, but some of his books just go haywire, and I sometimes wonder if he just doesn't know how to end. I can't. He knows how to end books, obviously, but I don't always love the endings to his books.
Yeah, I have not read it. I've read about the books online, but I haven't read it itself. But yeah, the end of the movie is at least the one from 1990, is fairly weak. But the build up and especially the flashback story is just really good, and it always creeped me out when I was a kid.
For the sixth day, we're going with another humorous one. It's Dale and Tucker vs. Evil, which, again, is another movie that subverts normal horror tropes. This movie follows Tyler Labine and Alan Tudyk as two brothers who look like Hicks. And so how the movie starts out is you follow these four stereotypical college kids who are going to go into the woods and then get terrorized by hillbilly rednecks. But then when you actually start following the rednecks, they're just two very lovable people. They're best friends. They just bought like this crappy cabin in the woods that's their dream home. They're going up to fix it up. And then just through a bunch of mishaps, they keep running into these college kids. And the college kids end up accidentally killing themselves on their property or around Dale and Tucker. And it's just hilarious, just how it keeps going on and on and on, and how you're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but my God, it's funny.
Yeah, I watched it once back when it was first out on DVD, and I remember really, really liking it. I'm always a big fan of Alan Tudyk.
Yeah, he's great, and he just takes so much punishment from everything because the other guy's like lovable and accidentally causes harm. Oh my God, it's so good. All right, so what are you doing for day 7?
So for my next pick, I'm going with the original Insidious. It is genuinely terrifying. It came out a few years ago, and it's the first of 4. And the other 3 are also good, but they didn't quite live up to the fear factor of the original.
I haven't seen Insidious. What's it about?
So the first one builds a world where there's another dimension kind of just beyond this one where ghosts and demons live and hang out, called the Further. And there's a little boy who learns how to astral project so he can leave his body and kind of float around in this other dimension. But he gets lost or captured, and so he can't get back to his body, and then all the other ghosts and demons start trying to steal his body.
So they can possess him, essentially.
Yeah, they have to kind of like spend time nearby before they can get in. They have to like weaken defenses, I guess. So the movie is kind of about the family trying to figure out what happened to this little boy's soul and try to get it back into the body before anything else can take hold of it.
Interesting. It sounds cool. I should check that out.
It is really, really good. There's a lot of really great jump scares. I know they're cheap, but this movie does them really well. And we late nighted it at work, which means we watched it after we had closed up the theater and everyone had gone home. We just ran it for ourselves. And I have never screamed out loud like that in a movie before.
Really? So it is just terrifying then.
Yeah, it's great. There are some shots that really just pull you right out of your seat.
Wow.
And like I said, there are 3 more now that just expand on that world. The second one's kind of a direct sequel. The third and fourth aren't quite direct sequels. They just kind of take place in the same world and build upon the mythology that they've created for it. And I hope they don't stop because they've all been pretty good.
Really? Do you think the first one's the best, or the first one's just like this jumping off point?
Oh, no, the first one's definitely the best so far.
Cool. For day 8, I am putting Jeepers Creepers 2 on the list. I was a little bit torn on this. I think the 2 Jeepers Creepers movies are both really fun, scary movies. So Jeepers Creepers 1 follows you get sort of the origin stories of the monster in it, but it's essentially this creature that comes about, I think it's every 27 years, and it collects the body parts that it needs to survive for hibernation of another 27 years, and it follows him terrorizing 2 people. But I think the second one is actually better overall. It follows him coming out of hibernation, and it's him chasing a school bus full of kids, and he crashes it, and he's just collecting them, and it's just terrifying because it's, a bunch of young kids not knowing what's going on. And then you have a side story of this family who had their son taken from them when he was much younger, hunting this monster while he's hunting them. So you get, a weird triangle of him hunting a group and then him being hunted. I think it's a really, really fun movie. It's a good monster movie, but the monster can think. Overall, I think So really, really good Halloween style movie.
I definitely also like Jeepers Creepers 2, and I do agree that 2 is the best of this franchise so far.
All right, so what are you doing for day 9?
Day 9 is going to be Lights Out. It's a relatively new horror movie. It came out 2 years ago in 2011, and it is about a family who's being haunted by this shadow thing. It's like a shadow person that lives in their house and is kind of psychically connected with their mother.
I have not heard of that.
It wasn't super popular. I remember it being here not very long before it kind of left and went to DVD, but I watched it with very little expectations. I'd kind of lost interest in more recent horror movies. Besides the Insidious franchise, nothing had really done it for me recently. But this one really surprised me. It was a lot better than I was expecting it to be.
Cool. I'm going to have to check that out. So you think it's definitely a horror movie then?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's part mystery because you're trying to figure out, and the characters are trying to figure out what this shadow thing is and why it's connected to their mother and where it came from. And they do end up figuring it out. And I think the reveal was pretty cool. I think they did a good job with that. I don't want to say anything and spoil the surprise, but it just appears like a silhouette with glowing eyes, and it kind of just runs from room to room in their house, freaking people out.
Awesome. For day 10, I'm putting Beetlejuice on here, and I'm noticing a theme that we've gone pretty heavy on the Tim Burton, or at least I have on this list. And it's because his style screams Halloween, I think. But Beetlejuice, directed by Tim Burton, has Michael Keaton in it playing Beetlejuice. He's iconic in the role. And also, I never actually realized this till I looked at it. Alec Baldwin stars in this. I never realized that was him when I was watching it, just because I'm so used to him in 30 Rock. And he's nothing like that in Beetlejuice. Like, it didn't even, click to me because I've never paid attention to the credits that was him. And then you also have Winona Ryder and Gina Davis. Really great cast. Beetlejuice follows the family. Alec Baldwin and his wife die, and they don't realize they're dead, but then it turns out when you're dead, you can't really leave the area, so they're haunting the house, but they're not very good. Winona Ryder's family moves in. They're trying to scare them, and they enlist the help of Beetlejuice, who is Michael Keaton, to help them scare. And it's such a fun movie.
Yeah, it definitely is a classic. I never would have remembered Alec Baldwin being in that.
I guess I just have not seen him when he's young. He looks so much different, a lot skinnier.
You mentioned 30 Rock. Have you ever seen Community?
Oh, I love Community.
There is, I don't know if you know, a running Beetlejuice joke in the background of Community, and it took 4 seasons for the punchline to happen.
I think I've seen parts of it, but I guess, can you refresh my memory?
There is 3 different episodes across 3 or 4 different seasons where one of the characters will say the name Beetlejuice, and the third time it happens, somebody dressed up as Beetlejuice just kind of walks through the background and doesn't do anything, but after they say the name 3 times, he appears.
That's hilarious. I think I've seen that on Reddit, but I did not notice it when I was watching through it.
I love Community for stuff like that. They're great at really long payoff punchlines.
Yeah, that's really good. All right, so what do you have for day 11?
I'm going with Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
Oh, that's a good one.
I'm a huge fan of this movie for no real reason. It's another one that just really surprised me. I went into it thinking, I can't wait to see how dumb this movie is, and walked out of it thinking, man, that was great.
Christian, I saw that in theaters, I remember. I can't believe I did. It's crazy. It's such a dumb concept.
I know, but it blew me away.
Yeah, so I'm guessing most people probably haven't seen this. What's the general premise of this?
The general premise is that when he is a child, his mother and friend are killed by a vampire, Abraham Lincoln. Yeah. And so he grows up learning about them, and a good vampire takes him under his wing and teaches them how to kill them. And so then when the Civil War breaks out, the vampires side with the South because they like slaves as a labor source and as a food source. And so then Abraham Lincoln getting into politics and becoming the president is driven partially by his desire to help kill vampires.
Oh my gosh. This movie came out when I think it was really in vogue to do just 2 random things. Like, you had Cowboys vs. Aliens come out around this time. Sharknado made its debut around this time. Like, it's just mashups that don't make any sense, but somehow we're in theaters.
Yeah, and speaking of those, I really considered putting on my list, but it didn't quite make it. Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
Oh my gosh, I forgot that was a thing.
Yeah, with Lily James and Lena Headey from Game of Thrones and Matt Smith from Doctor Who. It was a big cast for a weird movie like that.
Yeah, that is such an odd concept. Speaking of odd concepts, for day 12, I have Bubba Hotep, which I'm guessing you have not seen.
I have not.
Okay, so this is another Bruce Campbell movie, but it might be one of my favorites of him. So the concept is Bruce Campbell plays Elvis, but how he's still alive is it's an elderly Elvis living in a Texas retirement home, and his backstory is that him as Elvis had gotten tired of the fame and switched out with an impersonator, and the impersonator is the one who actually died, and Bruce Campbell's the real Elvis. And so he's living there, and there's also another character there, Ozzie Davis, who thinks he's JFK, but the wrinkle is Ozzie Davis is a black man. So it's, an old Elvis and then a black JFK, and his claim is that the government painted him black to hide him. And so they're living this retirement home, and then a mummy that's being transported crashes into a creek and starts sucking the life out of all the elderly retirement home people. So it's up to Elvis and JFK to fight the mummy, who they name Bubba Hotep, because it's a mummy that walks around in cowboy boots and a cowboy hat. And it's up to them to save the retirement home by fighting him as elderly people.
This sounds like the greatest movie that's ever been made.
Oh my God, I think it came out in like 2003. It's awesome. Really underrated.
I know I talked to Jen about it a long time ago, but I never actually got around to watching it.
If you get a chance over the next couple weeks, I highly suggest it. It's so good. All right, what do you have for day 13?
Day 13, I'm going back to a classic. I'm going for Silver Bullet, the Stephen King movie.
I've not seen that. What is that?
It's his werewolf book. His vampire one that got real big was Salem's Lot, but I'm a much bigger fan of Silver Bullet than I am of Salem's Lot. So it's about a small town in Maine being terrorized by something that's killing and mauling people, which then, of course, turns out to be a werewolf. And so, again, it's part horror, part mystery as the town kind of starts to tear itself apart looking for which one of its members is doing this and which one of its members is turning into a werewolf.
Interesting. Have you played the game Night of the Werewolf or something? It's some board game where you have to figure out who the werewolf is. That kind of sounds like that to me.
No.
Yeah, it's pretty good if you get a chance to check it out.
Well, the main character is a boy in a wheelchair and his uncle, who is played by Crazy Gary Busey. And he does a great job being Crazy Uncle Red. But yeah, the whole suspense of the movie is just about this little boy trying to figure out which one of his friends or town people is becoming this monster. And then obviously he comes to a head with it because he's the one going around trying to hunt it.
So is he, I'm guessing he's in a wheelchair the whole time?
Yeah.
That's like what is interesting about Stephen King's is his protagonists are generally in some way not how you would imagine a stereotypical protagonist to be. So this kid's obviously in a wheelchair. All of the kids in it have something wrong with them. Like the one kid has really bad asthma. And most notably, I think, in the Dark Tower series is, spoilers in book 2, Roland essentially loses the use of his dominant hand, which I was not expecting so early in that trilogy.
Oh, yeah, I'd forgotten that happened.
Yeah, it just adds a whole nother layer to, I think, like realism to his stories.
Yeah, I think they're good for that reason. I think a lot of times people are tempted to find these heroes that are kind of perfect, and that is boring to me. I talk a lot about Brandon Sanderson any chance I get, but he has these rules for writing, and one of them is weaknesses are more interesting than strengths.
It definitely is. For day 14, I'm also going for a classic, Nightmare on Elm Street by Wes Craven. Most notable person, I think, in is Johnny Depp. And if you for somehow don't know the idea of this, It's the first movie Freddy Krueger appeared in. He's essentially burned to death by these townspeople because he was a criminal, horrible person. And so he starts haunting the dreams of children. And if you die in these dreams, you die in real life. And it's just like, because everything happens in dreams where he's, powerful, they can do such great creepy moments with him. And it's amazing. Some of the directions they went with it. My favorite scene in the whole movie is the gratuitous use of blood that just should not be there, is when Johnny Depp is just pulled through his bed and it just splurts out so much more blood than is in the human body. Okay, so what are you watching on day 15?
I'm going with Halloween Town. It's an old Disney movie from 1998. And when I say Disney movie, I mean Disney Channel original.
Oh, yes. It's I remember loving this movie when I was a kid.
Yeah, they ended up making 3 of them. There was a Halloween Town 2 and a Halloween Town High where they were all in high school. This movie came out when I was 8, and I loved it. Everybody I knew loved it.
It's a strong nostalgia factor.
Yeah. So it's just about this girl who finds out that she's magic, and her grandmother introduces her to this other world that you can access through a bus to catch. And so they go there and explore kind of this magical world where she learns that she's a witch, and they have to fight the big bad guy. And I mean, it's very stereotypical. It's exactly what you would expect it to be, but it's really just a fun movie.
Oh, especially for if you're looking for a Halloween movie, that's one of the epitome of Halloween movies, because everything in it just relates to Halloween being fun.
Yeah, it's really Halloween for kids. It's not scary at all. It's just, like you said, Halloween is fun. It doesn't always have to be super scary.
I remember when I watched it when I was a kid, I thought the practical effects in it looked amazing. And then I remember I rewatched it when maybe I was in college. And there's a skeleton bus, a cab driver or something, if I'm remembering right. And it just looks so cheesy looking at it as an adult. So I'm wondering how the other practical effects hold up.
Probably not super well.
For day 16, I'm going Cabin in the Woods. This is a relatively newer movie. It came out, I think, in 2012, maybe 2011. It's directed by Drew Goddard, but more notably, it's produced by Josh Whedon, and Chris Hemsworth actually has an appearance in it, which I never paid attention to when I saw it. I saw this in theaters until I was like, oh, Chris Hemsworth's bigger now. Granted, he was big back then too because he was Thor, but I just didn't realize he was in it at this time. So Cabin in the Woods, again, subverts the normal tropes of horror movies. It's this group of kids going into the woods. You're seeing it from 2 angles. You're seeing it from them, and then you're seeing it from a government control agency which has to force these kids actually into these situations. So they're the ones controlling. It's like these kids are in a room, and they're controlling what they're doing. So they're sending pheromones to make them act stupid, and they're trying to make them pick items to see how they're attacked. So you see a bunch of different monsters, and then it goes in a complete 180, and they're not even in a cabin anymore. They're in this secret facility, and I don't want to spoil it too much. There's a whole reason for all going on, but it's so fun. It reminds me a lot of Resident Evil 4, where you start out in one place in a village in Resident Evil 4, and by the end you're doing something completely different you weren't even expecting. I think it's a great movie.
Yeah, I fully agree. It was another movie I didn't have a whole lot of expectations for, but I'd never seen a movie subvert so many horror movie tropes so well and so successfully before I'd seen Cabin in the Woods. It really blew me away.
I mean, they have everything, and then they know what they're doing. It's like a wink and a nod. They have the stoner guy. They have the virgin. I mean, they have categories of this stuff. I mean, one of my favorite. Oh God, you can't really spoil a movie that's 7 years old. There's this one part where this guy's like, "I'm going to jump it in a motorcycle." When he goes to jump a ravine, just hits like an invisible wall and blows up.
Yeah. So the control room operators are Richard Jenkins, who you might know as the father in Step Brothers, who's genuinely just hysterical, and Bradley Whitford, who I knew best as being Josh on The West Wing. It was really fun for me to see him in a more comedic role, and I loved the two of them. They were my favorite characters.
Yeah, there's just so much to like about that movie. Even if you're not into horror movies, because it's not really a horror movie, I don't think. It's fun.
Yeah, it really is.
What do we got for day 17?
This one's going to be a bit of a deep cut. It's called The Halloween Tree. It came out in 1993, and it's a cartoon.
I know this one. I think it's from just the area you're from because my wife loves it, and I had never heard of it before.
Yeah, it is a really outstanding movie. It was a movie I watched a lot when I was a little kid, and then I'd kind of forgotten about it until about 5 or 6 years ago. And for some reason, it just popped into my head, and I watched it again, and it really held up. So for the vast majority of you that won't know The Halloween Tree, it is about 4 kids who are trying to go trick-or-treating on Halloween night, and they're going to meet their 5th friend, but they find out he's been rushed to the hospital because he has appendicitis. And then they meet his ghost, which leads them to this creepy house that has this creepy old man in it named Carapace Clavicle Moundshroud, which I just love that name, who is actually voiced by Leonard Nimoy, who's obviously Spock. And he takes them on a magical adventure to kind of let them learn where their costumes come from. So like the one is dressed as a skeleton and they'd go to the catacombs, and one is a gargoyle and they go to Notre Dame to look at the gargoyles there. One is a mummy, so they go to ancient Egypt. And it's really just a very fun movie. It's not very scary, but it's really just well done. And it's based on a story by Ray Bradbury, who's just an outstanding author, and he's the narrator for the movie.
Yeah, I think that's actually the most interesting thing about it is this is based on Ray Bradbury and then also him narrating, which I saw that and I could not believe it that he was doing that, and he's really good at it.
Yeah, and also the music is really good. Like the music is what stuck with me the most, I think. But I would recommend this movie as emphatically as I can, just because so many people have never even heard of it. And even when I went looking for it a few years ago, it took some hunting to find.
Oh, no, yeah, it's not easily available. And there's no, like, I have not been able to find a very good version, like a good quality version of it consistently.
Yeah, like I used to rent it at Blockbuster or wherever it was that we rented stuff back then, and I haven't really seen a physical copy since.
Yeah, and it's also like you're saying, like it's part educational, which is weird for a Halloween movie, but it works.
Yeah, and Leonard Nimoy does a great job voicing his character. He really makes him seem sinister, but also like a little bit goofy. Like I said, it's a deep cut because it's a very obscure movie, but I can't recommend it enough.
For day 18, I am going with Saw, which I'm not sure if Saw is really considered a horror movie. I think of it more as a thriller, but just because how gruesome it is, that it fits in. If you guys have not heard of Saw, it's essentially someone's put into a situation where they have to make the choice between 2 horrible things, where one, they'll survive and they'll either have to mutilate themselves or mutilate someone else. And it's just the situations he puts them in. But then at the same time, the movie is them trying to find the killer, and they've created a whole series of it. But the first one I think was the best, and I thought the ending of it was, there's a twist at the end that I just did not see coming that I thought was amazing, which I don't know. I'm assuming have you seen this, Christian?
Not for a very, very long time, and I never watched any of the subsequent ones.
Yeah, I think this is the best one. What I actually think is most interesting about this is it's directed by James Wan, who's had a very weird trajectory for his directing. He's done this. He's done the Conjuring movies. He's also directed Fast 7. He directed Insidious. And then he's directing Aquaman. Like, he's all over the place with the style of movies he's doing. Because normally, if you do horror, you stay in that genre. It's weird to see him go out to, one of the largest movie franchises in the world with Fast 7 and then helm Aquaman.
Yeah, that's quite a collection of things.
Okay, what are you going with for day 19?
I'm going with another part of a franchise. I'm going with Scary Movie 3.
What happens in 3?
3 is mainly a parody of Signs, which is another movie I'm going to bring up in a couple of entries. The president is played by Leslie Nielsen, and they're trying to figure out what to do about an alien invasion in rural America.
Yeah, I really like the Scary Movie ones. This one has Charlie Sheen, and I think he's hilarious in this one. He essentially plays the brother of the one guy in Science, and I think he does a great job of that.
The other one that this one mainly parodies is The Ring. So it has the creepy girl climbing out of the well, and that takes place, of course, on the same farm that the aliens have come to in a miraculous twist of fate. And so they're trying to solve both of these mysteries, and Anna Faris is mostly involved with the Ring part of the story, and I love her. I think she's good in everything.
I remember seeing this movie when I was in middle school, and man, these movies I think are made for a certain age of your life, and then you love them, but then when the new ones come out, you're like, this is dumb. But you still like the old ones.
Yeah, I think these movies kind of got carried away with themselves because they branched out from the scary movies to trying to do parodies of everything, and most of them didn't really work.
Oh my gosh. I don't know if these are the guys who did it up at Meet the Spartans.
Yeah, I think it's at least some of them.
Yeah.
There was Superhero Movie, and there was Date Movie, and there was Haunted House 1 and 2, which I don't think that was the same team, but it was along the same vein. And there was 2 or 3 other ones that I just can't remember at the moment. Action Movie, I think, was one of them. So They really got kind of away from doing it well and just trying to pump them out.
Yeah, but those first couple ones were really well done.
I don't know that I've ever seen the first one. I know I've seen 2 and 3. I actually got into an argument with my brother a couple of days ago because he says the second one is better than the first, but I just don't see it.
Do you mean the third one?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, first one's parodies mainly Scream. I actually think that might be like technically one of the best ones because it's like deep cuts. The second one parodies, I think it's House on Haunted Hill.
Yeah.
And then this one, Signs. Yeah, I think they're all pretty good. If I had to pick one, I think the first one I think might be the best one, but I think they're all pretty comparable. I am going with Paranormal Activity, which was a sleeper hit back in the day, even though they've done these to death now. But this came out, if I'm remembering right, maybe 2009. It's essentially a found footage movie where this couple move into a house and they're starting to see all these weird things, so they put up cameras. And so most of the movie is just shot from security cameras that they put up in their house. And you don't really see much of anything, but you'll see doors closed. You'll see things move when no one's in the room. They'll find some creepy stuff in their attic. And it's just, the first time I saw it, it genuinely freaked me out. I think they were so well done for a one-off. And it has to be one of the biggest box office hits ever just for the budget they've put in, what they've made. They had a budget of $15,000 and they made $193.4 million in the box office.
Wow.
And plus, that's just the first one. I mean, they've had sequels, tons of sequels, but that alone, I remember when that came out, people were like, yo, you got to check out this Hindi movie. And it has to be one of the lowest budget movies ever made to then put out over almost 200 million in the box office.
I remember when this first came out because I had already started working at the theater, and I'd never seen a marketing campaign like this where they released it in like 3 theaters nationwide and then put all of the work onto the fans to make them release it elsewhere. They basically put out commercials showing people freaking out in the theater and saying, hey, if you want to see this movie in your theater, call your theater and make them ask for it. And man, it went wide real fast. I'd never seen anything like it.
Yeah, see, I didn't know about that. I remember the commercials because they're like, this is, a lot of people at the time are like, this is one of the scariest movies ever. Yeah, I believe it. It was a cult phenomena at the time that it came out. Again, it's been done to death now, but at the time, it was crazy when it came out.
Well, there's been, I think, I want to say 6 of them now, maybe just 5, but I want to say 6. And this was a weird series for me in that at first it continually got better as it went.
Really? See, I've only seen the first one.
Well, like you said, that first one is just found footage of this one couple and like weird stuff is happening around their house. And then the end is pretty crazy. But then the later ones build on this world and they give context to the events of the first one. And so at first they were telling the story backwards. Like the first one takes place after the second one. And then the third one is way in the past. It takes place when the characters are just kids. So it goes back and it tells the story of this family and how this entity has kind of been harassing them for a lot longer than it seemed like it was in the first one.
Interesting. I might have to check out the newer ones, and I assume they just got worse, as I think most horror movie sequels, I imagine, do, but I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, the later ones weren't super great. I think I didn't even watch the newest of them. But yeah, for a little while, they kept getting better because they kept building on the story. It wasn't just more nonsense.
Nice. All right, what do you have for day 21?
Day 21 is going to be Sixth Sense for me.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, so I have mixed feelings about The Sixth Sense for a very specific reason. And it's that I was fairly young when The Sixth Sense came out. In 1999, I would have been 9 years old. And so I watched this in theaters, and I remember everybody talking about how incredible it was after I'd already seen it. But I was too young to really appreciate the twist as it happened. And so it's a movie that I really wish I could kind of erase from my brain and go back now and watch again.
Yeah, that's it. That's a good point you bring up, because I also saw it when I was much younger, and you're just like, oh, I see, that's what it was. But on the rewatch, you're saying it's a lot better.
Yeah, I think it's good when you can really appreciate the twist as it happens, because it didn't really click for me as a little kid. It had to be explained to me, and then I was like, oh, okay. But I think if I'd watched it for the first time as an adult, it really would have shocked me. It really would have blown me away. I feel largely the same way about Usual Suspects, thinking like, oh, yeah, this is one of the greatest twists of all time, but everybody already knows what it is. And so when I watched it for the first time, I already knew it was coming. It had kind of been ruined for me.
Oh, I see. This is still one M. Night. Well, granted, he's done some good movies since, but this is one of his first like actual huge movies where everyone's like, oh, this guy knows how to do twists. And then he slowly devolved into someone who kind of became a joke, to the point where I don't know if you ever saw the Robot Chicken skit where they're just making fun of him in Twist, where it's just him rhyming the word twist, to then him actually having another good movie come out recently.
Well, yeah, M. Night was good. Obviously, I'm going to bring him up again. Like I said, Signs is coming up for me on my list. But his first movie wasn't a horror movie. It was a relatively unknown movie called Wide Awake, about a boy whose grandfather dies and he's looking for God. And it's probably my favorite movie of his, and it's so different than anything else he's done.
Really?
Yeah, I just kind of happened upon it on HBO one day while I was cruising around, and I watched it the whole way through, and I loved it. And when his name popped up at the end, I was shocked. I guess that was the twist.
That's good. My least favorite of his twist was The Village. I saw that in theaters and was severely disappointed by that movie. And then also he did Avatar, The Last Airbender too, right?
Sure did.
Oh my God, they just killed that movie top to bottom. They killed that series top to bottom. I mean, that's one of my favorite cartoon series. And that movie was so bad that I ended up turning it off like 30 minutes and I couldn't even watch it. It was that bad.
Well, I finished it and I wish I hadn't.
All right, for day 22, I am going with the classic Ghostbusters. Has Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Sigourney Weaver, Harold Ramis, Rick Moranis, Ernie Hudson, all-star cast. One of the best comedies I think ever made. If you somehow not seen it, the story follows a group of people who become ghost hunters around New York City. You see the classic Slimer, who's actually not in it very much. And then I think the most memorable scene of the movie is the giant Stay Puft Marshmallow Man walking down the street of Manhattan and then blowing him up. It's just such a good movie, top to bottom. It's well acted. good story. It's humorous. There's like I watched this, a decent number of times. And I just don't see a fault in the Ghostbusters.
It definitely is a classic. It's super quotable too. I know I use Ghostbusters quotes semi-frequently. It's a classic for sure.
Also, a bump-in theme song. Like, everyone knows the Ghostbusters theme song.
Oh, absolutely.
I think it's even became somewhat more popular and recently because they tried to do the reboot and it was not received well, which I think made people appreciate the first one even more so.
Did you like the reboot?
I didn't see it. I know a lot of people didn't like it because it was an all-female cast, which I didn't have a problem with. But I then just heard in general it wasn't a very good movie, so I just decided not to see it.
It had its faults. I'm no great fan of Melissa McCarthy or Kristen Wiig, but on the whole, I really liked it. I thought Kate McKinnon and Leslie Jones were both hysterical in it.
All right. See, since you're saying it's actually not bad, I might check it out. Everything I heard was it was just generally not funny, which I feel like to have a good Ghostbusters movie, it has to be funny. So I might check it out since you said it's not that bad.
It also does feature all 4 of the original Ghostbusters in one way or another.
Really?
Yeah.
As like their characters, or they just like make cameo, like the actors make cameos?
They just make cameos. Like Bill Murray is a newspaper critic or something. Dan Aykroyd is a cab driver. Ernie Hudson ends up being Leslie Jones's father. And then obviously Harold Ramis passed away a few years ago, but they have a bust of his head sitting in like one of the college libraries that you if you blink, you miss it, that they walk past his head on like a pedestal.
Huh. That's like, I think, a good in-joke to do. No, not his death, but like keep the characters.
Yeah, it was fun to see them all back again.
All right, what do you have for day 23?
Day 23 is going to be, as I've said several times now, Signs. This is probably the last M. Night Shyamalan movie that I really, really enjoyed, although arguably Lady in the Water. But Signs is about an alien invasion. Mel Gibson wakes up at the beginning to find out that his corn has been turned into an enormous crop circle. And then the first half of the movie is just about them kind of discovering that weird things have been happening around the globe. And then the second half is about the actual invasion and attack.
Yeah, Signs I thought was good when it came out. Like you said, it's one of the, I think, the last M. Night Shyamalan's movies that I really liked. It's also really probably one of the last Mel Gibson movies that came out before he really fell off. I mean, there was Passion of the Christ, but I think this was one of his last big movies before he had so much controversy associated with him.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, I think Sign gets a lot of hate kind of retroactively just because so many people have started hating on M. Night and Mel Gibson both. Joaquin Phoenix is in it. He's very good. Abigail Breslin is in it. She's very good. I stand by it. I think it doesn't get the level of hate that it deserves. I think it's really creepy, especially in the beginning when you're not really sure what's going on.
Yeah, the aliens themselves, I think their design is creepy. The first time you really see an image of them is through a reflection on a knife, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, and there's a really blurry like newscast where you see kind of a silhouette of one.
Yeah, so like the whole time you're not entirely sure what they look like. So it's also like the fear of the unknown you have, of what's out there as well. I think it's a well-done movie.
Yeah, I just watched it again recently, and it did hold up. You don't get a real good, clear look, like a steady shot of the alien until right at the end.
Yeah, when the guy bats away, right?
Yeah.
For day 24, I am going with 13 Ghosts, which is a movie from the early 2000s. I know this was a remake of a 1960 movie, and I know at the time it came out, it got a decent amount of buzz, but you don't really hear much about it anymore. So 13 Ghosts follows the story of a family that moves into a house of a deceased member, and he bequeaths it to him. And then they find out that this guy had actually been trapping ghosts to power this house to do stuff. There's a couple twists in there I don't want to spoil for you, but it turns out that the ghosts eventually get free, and a lot of them are murderous. So it's them trying to survive. What I really like about this movie is that each ghost, it has its own design and their own concept, kind of like a video game boss. And I wish they had given more screen time to these ghosts because some of them are amazing. And so it's them trying to then put the ghosts back, and there's a whole nother set about him trying to save his kids and stuff. But I think the stars here are the ghosts themselves, and then just them just going around, and I think they're awesome.
Yeah, I love this movie. I was bummed out that you put it on your list because I was going to put it on mine. I'm a huge fan of this movie. I have been ever since I saw it the first time. And the star is Tony Shalhoub, who I'd only ever seen in Monk. So it was fun to see him do something a little different.
Yeah. So what do you like about this movie then, since I didn't realize you also were a big fan of it?
Oh, yeah. Well, almost exactly what you said. The ghosts all have their own distinct designs. They all have like code names that they've been trapped to be an engine for this house. I like that the house is all made of glass with those like sliding doors. The house ends up being a machine essentially, and so the glass walls all move around and it becomes like a moving maze.
Yeah. Oh my God. I feel like it's underrated because no one talks about it ever.
Yeah, and there is a twist towards the end that I really enjoyed that surprised me. I can't. I'm a big fan of this movie. I need to watch it again real soon.
Yeah, I definitely watching it this month, day 24. All right, what do you have as number 25?
25, I'm going in on a comedy for Young Frankenstein.
I've heard great things about Young Frankenstein. I've never actually seen it.
Oh, that is a genuine shame. It's old. It came out in 1974, and it contains so much comedy. It's one of my probably top 5 favorite comedies of all time.
Awesome. So what is it about?
It is about Victor Frankenstein's grandson returning to his grandfather's castle and finding out that all his life he'd been trying to disavow this crazy scientist who brought shame to their family, but he finds out that, oh man, everything was real. And so he tries to create his own Frankenstein's monster, and all sorts of wacky hijinks ensue.
Oh, man, I have to check that out.
It's super fun. They deliver incredible amounts of comedy with just like single words or single sentences. There's a lot of physical comedy that I really enjoy. It's a Mel Brooks movie. He's done a lot of amazing comedies. He's done Blazing Saddles. He did Robin Hood Men in Tights. He did Spaceballs. Really just some incredible comedies. And so this was his kind of foray into the horror world, and it really works.
All right, for day 26, continuing on with a little bit of the humor theme, I'm going with Zombieland. Stars Woody Harrelson, Jesse Eisenberg, Emma Stone. It's another take on the zombie genre, especially when this movie came out in 2009. I believe The Walking Dead had just been released or was just getting released around the corner, so there's a lot of zombie stuff coming out at once. But I think this is one of the better done ones. It's a comedy about these 4 people just driving around trying to survive. It has one of the best ending scenes for a zombie movie I've seen, where they're just fighting and killing a bunch of zombies in an amusement park. Overall, very fun movie.
Yeah, definitely agree. This is an old favorite of mine as well.
All right, where are you going for day 27?
I'm going to Fright Night, which has been done a couple of times, but I'm going with the newest version from 2011. It has Anton Yelchin as the kid, and it has Colin Farrell as the vampire. So the original plot is basically a vampire next door story. This creepy guy moves in next door to this family, and he has, blackout curtains and black paint on his windows, and he never comes out during the day. And so it's part like Rear Window or Disturbia, where they're just kind of spying on their neighbor because they think he's creepy, and then they find out, oh, he actually does have something to hide, that he's a vampire.
Interesting. So is it a horror movie?
Yes, for sure. It also stars David Tennant as a TV host who pretends to hunt vampires. And I've never seen David Tennant in a role like this. I know him from Doctor Who and from Broadchurch, but in this, he just plays this wacky, irreverent TV personality.
Really? I really like David Tennant. I might check this out just because he's in it. Also, I like Anton Yelchin. He's the guy who was in Star Trek, right? And unfortunately got pushed by a Jeep. Yeah,
and he was also Odd Thomas in the Odd Thomas movie, which is also very good.
That's right. Yeah, that's not a bad movie either. I didn't realize that was him. Grant, I think I saw that before I really knew who he was. For day 28, I am going with It, the 2017 version, because we talked about this a little bit earlier. I'm just going to go through this a little bit quickly. Like you said, it's just about kids fighting their demons. It's the It clown, played by Bill Skarsgård, who you like the Tim Curry version. I think I like Bill Skarsgård better, even though I don't really remember the Tim Curry version all that much. So I would have to rewatch that to verify. But I think it's a really good like childhood adventure movie. These kids are trying to find whatever killed their brother. I think the opening scene is meant to be scary, but I burst out laughing when like Georgie just like pulled into the drain, and there's just so much blood, and I'm like, how does no one notice? It's like that kid's screaming. I don't know. I thought that was like kind of funny. Like, oh my god, I shouldn't be laughing, but that part was, I thought, very overdone. But overall, I think the best part of the movie is when they go to the house to fight the monster the first time, and it takes on all these different forms, and it is the house. I think that part is genuinely like horrifying when they're going through, and he's just everywhere becoming their fears. One of the best parts of the movie.
Yeah, I really like this movie. It impressed me. Like I said earlier, I was nervous about it because I'm such a big fan of the originals, but they did a really good job with it. I'm really looking forward to the sequel.
Yeah, same. What do you have for day 29?
All right, this is going to be another bit of a deep cut, but this is Ernest Scared Stupid. It is one of the Ernest series from the 90s, where it was Ernest Does Everything, Ernest Goes to Camp, Ernest Goes to Jail, and this was his Halloween one.
I love the Jim Varney movies, and the Ernest movies are so good. I loved them when I was a kid.
Yeah, so this movie scared the crap out of me when I was a little kid.
Really?
It gave me legitimate nightmares, and it's super strange because I'd seen movies that were objectively so much scarier than this.
What was it that freaked you out about Ernest?
Honest to God, I don't remember. Like, it's silly to say now, but it really did. It's about a goblin or a troll or something that gets freed, and then it hunts kids and turns them into little wooden dolls and like eats their soul or something, and it lives in a tree. And I don't know what it was about this movie, but it scared me so bad when I was a little kid.
Oh, man. I'm sorry, I would say more. I don't remember much of it. Like, I remember seeing all those movies, and I remember loving them. I don't remember much about them.
Yeah, it had a weird ending. Like you said, it's hard to ruin a movie that's been out for this long, but it ends up being weak against milk, I think. And so all the kids have to go to the grocery store and buy milk to fight it. It's objectively stupid. I mean, all of the Ernest movies are dumb in one way or another, and they're meant to be fun, but I don't know what it was about this that it really freaked me out.
All right, for day 30, I'm going with the movie I was really surprised I liked, which was Goosebumps from, I think it was 2016. It stars Jack Black. I went into this thinking it would be so dumb, but I loved the Goosebumps books when I grew up, so I decided to go see it. And man, Jack Black steals the show in this movie. If he was not in it, I don't think it would be nearly as good, but I think it's one of his better roles. Like, he is so funny in this. He plays R.L. Stine, and he's hilarious.
I did not end up watching this. I also had the Goosebumps books when I was a little kid, and I definitely loved them, but for whatever reason, this one came and went without me watching it.
Oh, man, if you get a chance, check it out. He plays such a good, pompous just writer. The side stories themselves aren't horrible. It's about so this kid moves in next door to R.L. Stine, and R.L. Stine has a daughter, and he's trying to talk to her, but R.L. Stine's very protective. He ends up breaking into R.L. Stine's house, and it turns out that every character that R.L. Stine has written is actually real. So this kid accidentally releases all of R.L. Stine's monsters, and they start terrorizing this town. And so then it's the kid, the daughter, Jack Black, and this other friend who's kind of a loser, going around trying to recapture all of the creatures. So if you read the books, you'll see a lot of them you recognize. The big one is the puppet is the mastermind behind it all, and it's also voiced by Jack Black. So it's like a weird take where R.L. Stine is his own worst enemy, where, you know, this thing is his dark side, and it's so much fun. It's a fun adventure movie for like kids. It's not very scary, but it is fun, especially if you like the Goosebumps books.
That sounds good. And a brief aside on something more current events, I just watched House with the Clock in Its Walls, which also stars Jack Black, and it seems like it had a very similar energy to Goosebumps. I really enjoyed it a lot more than I thought it was going to. So if Goosebumps is as good as House with the Clock in Its Walls, I'm looking forward to watching it.
I'm gonna have to check that out. I saw commercials for that, and I wanted to see it just because I really like Goosebumps. Jack Black, I think, has had a resurgence. He was awesome in Jumanji.
Oh my God, was he ever?
Yeah, so I really like what he's been putting out lately, because there was a little while there where I wasn't really into his movies, but the past couple I've seen from him have been good. So I'm excited to see his newest one.
Yeah, House was very fun. I definitely recommend it.
So for day 31, we're each going to pick a movie, and I'm going to go first because mine is Hocus Pocus. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Stars Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, has Kathy Najimy in it as three witches who come back from the dead. I'm not going to go over it too much because we talked about it earlier. The only thing I do want to note is this movie actually was not very well received when it first came out. It was originally released over the summer, and critics hated it. But for me, it's like the ultimate Halloween movie. You know, it takes place on Halloween night. There's kids trick-or-treating. It's just amazing. All the actors, Bette Midler kills her role in it as a over-emotional witch. I love the movie.
Oh yeah, she's great. And that's amazing that it wasn't well received. I didn't know that, especially considering like how much of a classic it is now. You can't hardly breathe in late September or October without running into Hocus Pocus somewhere.
Well, no, that's why it's actually popular. So because it had done so poorly, I think the rights for TV play were cheap. So someone bought them and just would play it a lot, and then everyone would watch it on TV, and they're like, oh, this movie's awesome, because, you know, you play it in October. It's way better than if you play it in the middle of the summer. And that's actually how it got popular, was through, I believe, if I'm remembering right, on TV, syndication and TV rights of them just playing it.
That's awesome. I love how stuff like that works out.
Yeah. Okay, so what is your day 31 Halloween night movie?
All right, my last pick is the original Poltergeist from 1982.
That is a good one.
I adore this movie. And this is the one I was talking about during Ernest when I said I had seen objectively much scarier movies before I watched Ernest Scared Stupid. I'd already seen Poltergeist, and it did nothing to me. I loved it, but it did not scare me at all.
Yeah. Man, that movie at the time, I mean, granted, I wasn't really alive when it came out, but that had to freak audiences out when they first saw that.
Yeah, it's really creepy. Even now, like it probably creeps me out more now than it did when I was little. But yeah, the little girl does such a good job just being a little unsettling, and the old lady who they hire to like exercise the house is just a lot of fun.
Yeah. Maybe I'm misremembering this, but so there's a scene where they have the Indian bodies come up from the pit, right?
Yes.
And who knows, this might be an internet rumor I never substantiated, but I've heard that was actual cadavers in there and they didn't tell the actors.
Ooh, that's unsettling.
Which is like what really creeps me out by that movie, which now that I'm saying it on a recording, I feel like I should have fact-checked that first, but I don't have internet right now. So I'm just going with that it was actual cadavers in there and like the actors didn't know about it. And that makes it so much creepier to me, but I might be wrong.
Oh yeah, I hope that. That's mega weird.
Yeah.
But the dad in Poltergeist is Craig T. Nelson, who's super famous for a whole bunch of things. But that was probably the first thing I ever saw him in.
All right, guys. Thanks for checking out the 31 movies we think you should check out for October in preparation for Halloween. Just as a final thing, Christian, do you have any movie you would not suggest for Halloween that you were either disappointed in or you just really didn't like?
The Shining.
Really? Because people seem to love that movie.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a lot of pushback for it, but I watched it when I was 18. My college put on like a Halloween movie marathon every Saturday or whatever it was, and I'd never seen The Shining, and I went and watched it, and man, I found it real boring. I did not enjoy it at all.
I'm like torn on it because overall I think it's like, objectively it's not a bad movie, but I agree with you. It's just not for me. I like the book better.
Everybody loves it. There's all that symbolism, and the movie's well made. I thought it was boring.
All right. For me, I'm going to put Hellraiser on there. I was disappointed when I saw it. I thought it would be a lot better, and I thought it was just a little bit slow.
Yeah, I've never seen any of the Hellraisers.
So Hellraiser is about, they're like demons called, if I'm remembering right, they're the Chobits or something like that. And they're supposed to love like hedonistic activities. So they love pleasure and pain. They say it's like two sides of the same coin or something like that. So people unlock them and then, they start tormenting them, but it's supposed to be pleasure. It's weird. I did not love it. And sorry, I just want to throw one other one on there. The new Amityville Horror starring Ashton Kutcher. Such a bad movie that nothing happens.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, now that we brought it up, I'm running through all these different ones. We could do a whole other episode on just bad horror movies easily.
Yeah. Do you have any honorable mentions that didn't make it onto the list you'd like to give a shout out to?
The only one I can think of is probably Rose Red. I didn't put it on because it's not really a movie. It was also a TV series. It was 3 or 4 parts, so it's really long. But it's another Stephen King it's like a mansion in Seattle that's haunted, but the mansion is also alive, and so it's constantly, the walls and rooms are jumbling around and trying to trap people and get them stuck in there with the ghosts. It was really creepy. It's just very, very long.
Yeah. If I had one honorable mention, it would be The Frighteners starring Michael J. Fox. I remember seeing that movie as a kid, and it freaked me out, and I watched it when I was older. Not as scary as I thought, but still like a very fun movie. He's essentially a guy who sees ghosts, one of the best, and he has ghost buddies, and they're trying to fight this other ghost who's going around killing people. There's some twists in it. Overall, I think a great movie. If you want to switch one of our movies out on our list, I suggest that one. All right, so thanks for checking this out, guys. If you want to follow us, we're on @Gambots Network on Twitter. But otherwise, thanks for listening.
Thank you.